This is the 2024 all-new Apple Mac Mini, and this is my full in-depth review. The 2024 Mac Mini comes with an all-new design. As you can see, it's a really small Mac. The overall footprint of the Mac Mini is really small. At just 5 inches in width and length, it's the smallest computer that Apple make, and it's so small that I can hold it in my hand. If we take a look at a picture here, you can see what the old Mac Mini looked like compared to this 2024 newly redesigned Mac Mini. And I really love the new design. Like with a lot of Apple products, it's largely constructed from high quality aluminium, just like, say, the Mac Studio or the previous Mac Mini. But obviously, it being so small, it means that it takes up little to no room on your desk. And considering the power that this thing punches, it's incredibly impressive what Apple and their team have managed to design and engineer. As you can see, it's just a large kind of cube, a large square. It's hard to tell on camera how small it really is. If you haven't seen my unboxing video, the Mac Mini from a couple of months ago, go and check that out. Like with a lot of Apple's products, like the Mac Studio, their MacBooks, iMacs, it's pretty much entirely made from aluminium and plastic. The outer shell being constructed from aluminium. The Apple logo here is plastic in the middle, and then the bottom is plastic where we find the grille. So the design is really cool. It's almost as small as the Apple TV, and in terms of design, it kind of looks like a shrunken down Mac Studio. The advantages of it being so small are that you can literally put it in your backpack. If you're traveling and you don't have a MacBook, or you just want to carry a desktop computer around with you, you can literally just put it in your rucksack and carry it around, as long as you put it in a little hard case. It's roughly 40% smaller than the previous Mac Mini, which is, and considering the amount of power that you can get that this thing punches out, which we'll get into later, it's remarkable. This is Mac Mini on the bottom, which is where the fan is placed. When it's placed on the desk, there's a little gap between the aluminium and the plastic housing so that the fan can take in air. It only comes in one colour, in this space grey finish, which is kind of classic. All the previous kind of Mac Minis, Mac Studios have always come in this Mac classic colour, but I would have loved if it had come in space grey colour, which I think would have been a really cool idea. When it is on your desk next to your peripherals, like, the sheer size of it means that it doesn't take up much room at all on your desk, leaving you with lots of room on your desk to put your other pieces of equipment such as your keyboard and mouse. Next to my Xbox Series X, which is, like 6 times the size in terms of height, it dwarfs the Mac Mini, which is, it's kind of funny how small it is in comparison to my Xbox Series X, in terms of how much power this thing has. If you're looking for a computer and you want, RGB LEDs in your face and you want it to be all kind of dancing and shining, then definitely consider looking at RGB gaming PCs. When we get to ports, the Mac Mini does quite well actually. If we look at the front, we've got 2 USB-C ports and a 3.5mm headphone jack. So you can connect your various dongles, like your USB hubs or your SSD drives or your peripherals. So you've got 2 USB-C ports. These are not Thunderbolt ports. There are no other ports on the front, there are no ports on the sides. If we look at the back, we've got the power port, we've got the Ethernet port. On this particular model, it's a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, which is an optional extra which I paid for, meaning that if you've got a special type of internet speed and cable, you can take advantage of ultra fast Wi-Fi speeds. However, that's an optional extra. Then we've got the HDMI 2.1 port, and we've got 3 Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 5 ports. And depending on which model you get, will depend on whether you get Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 5 ports. The M4 variants of this Mac Mini come with the Thunderbolt 4 ports, and the M4 Pro variants of the Mac Mini come with the Thunderbolt 5 ports, and the Thunderbolt 5 ports are slightly faster. The bandwidth is slightly faster than Thunderbolt 4. With classic Apple, there is no USB-A port, which isn't a surprise in 2025. Apple haven't been putting USB-A ports on their products for many years now. And there's also no display port. Apple is expecting you to connect this to your monitor or TV or whatever via either the USB-C Thunderbolt 5 ports or the HDMI ports. As I said, there's no USB-A port, so make sure you've got your adapters if you want to connect, say, a wired USB-A mouse, which I do. make sure you've got a USB-C to USB-A adapter. There's also no SD card reader like there is on, say, the Mac Studio. Then we come to the position of the power button, which is probably the worst design choice I've ever seen on a product. Yeah, the power button is on the bottom at the back. You would have thought that ergonomically, from an ergonomic point of view, it would be sensible to put the power button either on the front, so you can easily press it, or on the top, so you can just press down. Maybe Apple could have put the power button in the Apple logo, so you press the Apple logo down and it turns the thing off. But no, Apple decided to put the power button on the bottom of the device. Yeah, the power button is actually at the back on the left. So if the Mac Mini is sat on your desk and you do wish to turn it on, what you have to do is you actually have to lift up the Mac with one hand, then put your finger underneath the button and press it. And that can be really weird if you've got cables connected to the back of it, or it's in an awkward place. It's just a really weird design feature. I mean, like, of all the other places Apple could have placed the button, like the front, the back, but no, they put it on the bottom. And yeah, you do have to lift up the Mac with one hand. You can't turn it on without lifting up the thing. And yeah, I just don't understand what the Apple engineers were thinking. I mean, whoever designed the placement of the button, needs to lose their job. In terms of specifications, the 2024 M4 Mac Mini is hugely customizable in terms of what specification and configuration you would like the Mac Mini to come with. All Mac Minis come with the exact same design, so they're going to look, all of them are going to look exactly the same. There are two main chips available. You've got the M4 chip, then you've got the M4 Pro chip. However, there are different variations of each M4 chip and each M4 Pro chip. The base M4 chip comes with 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU. But if you want the top spec M4 Pro chip, that comes with a 14-core CPU and a 20-core GPU. So there's the difference in cores. And that's obviously going to vary on what you use the computer for. In terms of what I'd recommend, if you're a light user and you need this for just an everyday computer, you don't need to be doing heavy, you're not using this for heavy video editing or 4K work or or gaming, just get one of the baseline entry-level M4 chips. The M4 chip is going to be more than powerful enough for simple tasks like web browsing, YouTube, Netflix, interior design, or kind of light image editing. If you want more of the powerhouse specification and you do want the power, and you're going to be doing heavy tasks like 4K or even 6K video editing, lots of multiple tabs, or like music production in Logic Pro, then maybe look at, say, the M4 Pro chip with the more cores. Mac Mini here is equipped with the top spec CPU with a 14-core CPU and 20-core GPU M4 Pro chip. I wanted to have the most powerful CPU you could get. As I do, obviously, I edit all my videos on this, and I also want this product to just last me a good 8 to 9 years. Obviously, there is a big difference in price between the baseline M4 chip and the M4 Pro chip. Aside from which M4 chip you go for, you've also got the RAM. It comes with a minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it maxes out at 64 gigabytes of RAM. I wouldn't recommend getting 64 gigabytes of RAM really for any person at all. For most users, I'd recommend getting 24 gigabytes of RAM. That's like the sweet spot. It's enough that you're not going to run out, and if you need to do kind of heavy work, sometimes like some video editing, you've got that 24 gigabytes of RAM should be capable enough. If you are planning on doing frequent video 4K editing with multiple layers of 4K video editing, or kind of Logic Pro music production with lots and lots of stacked files on top of each other, that's going to use more RAM, and maybe the 48 gigabytes of RAM is going to be more suitable. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend probably getting the 64 gigabytes of RAM. Then you've obviously got the storage. You've got 512 gigabytes, which will max out to 8 terabytes of storage. Really, I wouldn't recommend getting more than 2 terabytes of SSD storage, largely due to the amount that Apple charge for their storage, which is, I think, a bit ridiculous. You end up spending hundreds or even thousands on just upgrading the storage. I would recommend, unless money is no, get the 2 terabyte SSD and then just plug in an external Samsung T7 SSD with another 2 terabytes, and that will save you hundreds of pounds. The one I've configured here is the top spec M4 Pro chip with 14-core CPU, and the 20-core GPU. Then it's got 48 gigabytes of RAM and 2 terabytes of storage, which ended up costing me £2,600. The baseline Mac Mini like the most basic you can get with just a 10-core GPU and 10-core GPU, 25 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage costs you £599, which is probably a really fantastic deal. For just £599, you're getting the M4 chip, which is going to be powerful enough for most users. My overall kind of package that I'd recommend for most users is the model configured with the 10-core CPU and the 10-core GPU, 24 gigabytes of RAM and the 1TB SSD, which costs £1,199. If you really do want the top-end spec Mac Mini with the M4 Pro chip, 8TB of storage, 64 gigabytes of RAM, which is probably a bit overkill. That's going to set you back £4,600. I would say I'm a heavy user, and with my configuration with 48 gigabytes of RAM, I've never really managed to use more than 40 gigabytes of RAM, and that's with doing 4K video editing with GarageBand files open at the same time with multiple tracks of music. In terms of use, obviously being an Apple Mac and not a Windows traditional computer like 99% of other computers, it runs Apple's own macOS operating system, which either you're going to get on with or you're not. I came from a Windows PC, and it definitely took me, a couple of weeks to a month just to learn how to use macOS. If you're already in the Apple ecosystem and you use your iPhone and iPads, then, macOS is not going to take long to get used to. All the icons are pretty much exactly the same as using an iPhone. It kind of feels like using a big iPad on a big screen, which I don't know if is a good thing or a bad thing. In a way, I kind of feel like it feels too similar to just using my iPad at times, and I wish perhaps there was more of a difference between the software that you get on your iPad to what you get on your Mac. And I know over the years Apple have actually been trying to kind of bridge the gap between the iPad OS and the Mac OS. All the icons are exactly the same. Obviously the software isn't exactly the same. You obviously got the full desktop style icons with if you are a Windows user, there are kind of differences. Instead of Windows, you've got a command button instead. That's a big difference on a keyboard. You will need a Apple Mac keyboard to work with a Mac instead of a Windows keyboard. You obviously got the advantage of having features that work across your Apple devices, such as AirDrop. You can, sync your messages, your calendars, alerts, HomePod, your music. They're going to all work seamlessly across your Apple devices, which is probably the biggest, advantage of having a Mac. Do I prefer it to Windows computer? I would probably say no, actually. I wouldn't say Mac is any better than Windows. It probably just comes down to personal preference. In fact, Windows is probably more mainstream. Pretty much all applications now run perfectly well on both Windows and Mac. But there are exceptions. Some applications are going to work better on Windows. Some applications may work better on Mac. You've obviously got the Apple Store, like you get on your iPhone or iPad, and you've got a selection of apps. Then we get on to gaming. Apple Macs have never been really known for being the best for gaming, which is still true in 2025. If you're looking for a gaming PC, you want to be playing at Warzone, at 200 frames per second on your 4K monitor, then I wouldn't recommend a Mac really. It doesn't mean that you can't play Warzone. Obviously you can download Steam. Most games, like say, are designed and optimized primarily first for Windows and Mac afterwards, meaning that gaming is going to be just better on a Windows computer. And if you really are looking for a gaming powerhouse, then I would look at getting a gaming PC. And if we test the raw performance on this M4 Pro chip, check out the Blackmagic raw speed test on the 8K metal test. The CPU test reveals 61 frames per second and the GPU tests 184 frames per second, and that's for this top spec M4 Pro chip, which is obviously quite good. This probably competes against the Mac Studio, which has the M2 Ultra chip, and other similarly priced Windows computers around this £2,000 to £3,000 price for this kind of level of performance. Look at this graph here to compare this M4 Pro chip with the M2 Ultra chip. Obviously you can also compare the M4 chip performance with a similarly priced Windows computer. In terms of competition, obviously you've got the Windows PCs, and in terms of variety in what CPUs, there is so much more kind of variety in kind of what level of performance you want in terms of CPU, GPU, and kind of power performance. The range of power that you can, and kind of customizability with different CPUs, GPUs, RAMs, and just like what you can do with a Windows PC is just so much more flexible than what you can really do with an Apple Mac. and that's probably, you know, the big advantage of the Windows market. Having said that, I've never experienced any kind of performance problems with this Mac, and this is obviously my experience, and that's for the top-end M4 Pro chip. With my use of 4K video editing, even with multiple layers of 4K video editing and also GarageBand music production work, I've never experienced any kind of lag. Impressive, and that's kind of what I hoped for when I bought this. Final thoughts. The Mac Mini is an awesome all-round computer. Obviously, it's Apple's latest ultra-compact Mac desktop. My favourite thing about it has to be the ultra-compact design. As I mentioned at the start of the video, it fits in the palm of your hand. It takes up next to no little room on your desk. It's got that brushed aluminium design with the plastic Apple logo in the middle. Loads of connectivity to connect to your various displays. It's got the power to allow you to work productively, intensive graphical work, whether you're, you know, a music producer or a video editor. You've obviously got macOS, the heart of this product. If you are obviously in the Apple ecosystem, as I mentioned before in my HomePod review, then your Apple products are going to work seamlessly together. macOS is going to be your friend to your iPhone or your iPad. Well, that's been it. I hope you enjoyed this full in-depth review of the 2024 M4 Mac Mini. Give this video a like and a comment and subscribe for more videos in the future.